In this video, we're going to learn all about something called an array. An array is just another data type, kind of like a double or a string or an integer. But what makes an array special is that it can hold multiple values. So if I wanted to create just a regular data type, like a string data type, I can hold one value in there, and that's it. It can only hold one thing. But an array will fix that issue, allow you to hold multiple values in one variable. So to define an array, you can do this a couple of ways. The simplest way is to create an array that has items pre-populated in it. And I'm going to actually make this a variable instead of a constant because we'll be modifying this array later on. But these squared brackets indicate that this is going to be an array data type. So let's create some values in here. Let's go with cheese, because I love cheese. Pickles, I don't like pickles, but whatever. Let's go with cookies. And let's also go with lettuce. Let's be a little bit healthy, shall we? Okay, so what we have now is we have an array that has 4 values in it. Cheese, pickles, cookies, and lettuce. Each of these 4 items represents an index within that array, and each index has a number associated with it. An array will always begin at the index 0. So cheese is represented by index 0, pickles by index 1, cookies is index 2, and lettuce is index 3. We'll go ahead and we're going to go ahead and display the array down here, and we'll go ahead and see all the values in it. So of course we have cheese, pickles, cookies, and lettuce. Now what if we wanted to specify only one of these values? Well, obviously you would have to reference the index. So referencing the array gives you all the values. To get one of the values, you get the index. So if you want to get cheese, we'll have to reference index 0, which you just put that inside your squared brackets like so. If you want to reference lettuce, we would reference, wait for it, index number 3. Not 4, but 3, because it goes 0, 1, 2, 3. So over there, and we got lettuce. What happens if you want to replace a value or change a value within the array? Well, I don't like pickles. I really don't like them. So I'm going to remove pickles and replace them with carrots. So what you do there is you just reference the index, type the equal sign, and then replace it with carrots. So now let's look at the array, what it looks like after the replacement. And as you'll see, cheese, carrots, cookies, and lettuce. So we went ahead and replaced one of the array values very easily. Now remember that an array is only up to a certain number of indices. So in this case, it's from index 0 to index 3. What if we try to access index number 4? Let's see what happens there. And we get an error. The reason why is index 4 does not exist within the array. It just doesn't, it's not there. So you get an out of range error. So you can only access indices between 0 and 3. Now there's one more thing I want to show you before we move on, and that is that there's a second way to create an array. In this example now, we're going to be creating an array that's completely blank. There's nothing in it. It's just a basic array. It would be like saying, creating a string like this. I'm going to do the array equivalent of this right here. So let's do that. We're going to create an array, and I'll call it array2, and I'll go ahead and define it as a string type array. And for some reason you have to put these little parentheses at the end. I'm still not sure what that's all about, but this is the correct syntax if you want to create a blank array with nothing in it. And as you can see, if I paste it down there, the array comes up as being blank. There is nothing in it. If you want to add something to this array, what you could do is use something called the append function, and you can add something to it. So this is a string array, which means you can only add strings in there. So let's go with dog. And then we'll go ahead and see what the array looks like. Array 2. And it should have one item, which is going to be dog. And as you can see, there it is. Now you can only add one item at a time with the append function, or the append method. So I'm just going to do a couple more appends. Let's do cat, and we'll do bird. And as you can see, the array gets updated. Dog, cat, bird. Pretty simple. So that's how you can add items to an existing array. And we could do the exact same thing by adding words to this array down here using the append function. So going back up here, notice how this is a string array, which means you can only put string values inside it. Same thing with here. This is a string array because it has string values assigned to it initially. If I try to instead put a, let's say, decimal or a double type of number, so let's say 4.5, we'll get an error because you can't put a double into a string array. Same thing down here. If we try to, instead of carrots, we try to replace with let's say with a Boolean value. Let's try to replace it with the true Boolean value. This will give us an error as well because you can't put a Boolean or really anything into a string array unless it's a string. You could put the string that says true. This wouldn't be a Boolean. This would be a regular string that just says true. But anyhow, so that's something to just watch out for. You have specific arrays, but each array has a very particular data type, so you can't mix data types. You can't put a decimal or a double number into a string array. You can't put an integer into a Boolean array. You get the idea what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this array because I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to replace this with my carrots. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the append method just to show you that works here as well. And I'll add another element that says T, because I like T. T is really good. And so now our array should have, what is it, 5 values, I believe? Let's double check. 5. Yep, we have 5 values. Now, what if you want to add many items to an array, not just one item using append, but maybe 10 items or 5 items? Well, what you can do is you can use the compound assignment operator, which we learned a while back, like so, and then just add a bunch of additional items. So I'll put a few in, and so we have milk, eggs, and bread. So now if we look at the array again, it's going to have total, I think, 8 items in it. Let's take a look. Cheese, carrots, cookies, lettuce, tea, milk, eggs, and bread. So yeah, that's how you add multiple items to an array all at the same time. Now what if we wanted to, instead of appending to the end of the array, what if we want to add an item somewhere in the middle of the array? Not the end, but, maybe in the second or third index spot. Well, we would use something called the insert command, like so. So you would identify what you want to insert. So let's say instead of putting milk over there, let's put milk earlier in the array. Let's go ahead and make milk the second item right after cheese. So we'll insert milk. And if we want to put milk right after cheese, well, cheese is index 0. So if you want to be right after cheese, you have to be at index 1. So let's do that at index number 1. And now we have cheese followed immediately by milk. So that's the insert command right there. There are also methods that you can use to remove items from an array. So what you can do here is, I'm going to get rid of that little preview right there. But what you can do is, again, call the array, and then remove, and then it'll be at a specific index. So maybe we want to remove, what do we want? Let's remove eggs. So what index would eggs be at? Well, this array has, I believe it's 8 items in it now. It starts with cheese, then goes to milk, and then carrots, and then cookies, and lettuce, tea, eggs, and bread. So we have 8 items, which means that bread would be the 7th index because the last item in an array is going to be the length of the array, which is 8, minus 1, which is 7. So bread is going to be 7, eggs will be 6. So if you want to get rid of eggs, you would reference removing at index number 6. Let's see what that looks like if we did successfully remove eggs. And as you can see, we did. We got rid of the eggs item. So that's one way to remove items from an array. You can also remove items from an array by using the remove all command, which will completely empty the entire array. You can also use the remove first command, which will just remove the first item in the array. Or you can do the remove last command, which removes the last item in the array. So in this case, the item bread should be gone. Let's see if it works properly. And bread has been removed, so it worked correctly. Now, one last thing I want to show you. This is something that I think is unique to Swift. I haven't seen this in any other programming language. When you remove an item using one of these commands, the item that you removed can actually be saved into a variable. So let's say we have a variable that we're going to call it removed item. Again, I'm just calling it removed item for whatever reason. And interestingly enough, if you use any of the remove commands, it will actually put the item that got removed and store it into whatever this variable is right here. So this variable should say bread. So I'm going to print this variable out and see if it in fact says bread. And it does. Bread. So that's my not so short review of arrays. We covered how to create arrays that are either populated or not populated. We talked about different array types, so you can have an integer array or a string array or something else. You cannot mix types within an array, so if you make a string array, you cannot put integers or doubles or booleans into that array at any time. We explored ways to replace contents from specific array indices. We found out how to retrieve values from an array index. We learned how to add items to an array using a couple of different ways. Insert at a specific location inside the array. And we learned a bunch of ways to remove items from an array, which includes a way to completely erase everything in an array. I know I moved kind of quickly, but there's a lot of content here. It's just a lot of methods you have to understand how they work. But take some time, look over everything that we talked about, and when you're ready, move on to the next video, which will be about loops. You need to have a very firm understanding of arrays in order to understand loops. Oh, and one last thing before we talk about loops, I almost forgot. There is a property involved with arrays where you can actually get the number of items in the array. So strarray.count, like so. This should return 6, which it does. This identifies how many individual items are in the array. So on that note, we are done with arrays for right now. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.